we will look into our next concept, that is the relationship between the superelevation with the gauge, speed and the radius of the curve. How does the superelevation related to the gauge of the track? You know what is the gauge of the track? That is the distance between the two rails is called as the gauge of the track, and speed of the vehicle and the radius of curvature. So on a curved track, this is how this is somewhat how the rails look like. You can see the image of a curved track. You can see the superelevation, that is the height of the outer rail is increased when compared to the inside rail, right? This is how the superelevation look like, and this is how the curved track looks like. So we'll next look into the derivation. How do we derive the relationship between the gauge of the track, speed of the train and the radius of curvature? In order to study that relationship between, I have considered a diagram of the rail on a curved track. So you can see the rail, the wheel and the axle of the train. So what I have done is I have considered the inclination of the gauge or inclination of the train. So this is the angle. What is this? Alpha is the angle when I have considered the inclination of the rails. This is when the rail are normal. This is when the angle of inclination is considered. This is when the angle of inclination is considered. So in order to study this, I have considered this diagram, and I have considered the normal track and the inclined track. When I have considered the inclined track, where here I have considered the angle alpha, where W is the weight of the moving vehicle in kgs, that is the self weight of the vehicle, and V, small v, you can observe the small v, that is speed of the vehicle in meters per second. V is equal to speed of the vehicle in kilometers per hour. Next, R is equal to radius of curve in meters. G is equal to gauge of track in meters, where G is equal to gauge of, this is G, the gauge of track in meters, and G is equal to acceleration due to gravity in meters per second square, where small g is equal to acceleration due to gravity in meters per second square. Alpha is equal to angle of inclination, and S is equal to length of inclined surface in meters. S is equal to length of inclined surface in meters. This is what we are considering. So this is an image. You have to study this image before going to the derivation part. So in this case, F is equal to centrifugal force. F is equal to centrifugal force. G is equal to center of gravity. All these concepts are mostly related to elements of civil engineering, a subject which you have studied once upon a time. So let us move on to the derivation. The centrifugal force is given by the following expression. I have considered the expression for a centrifugal force, that is F is equal to W V square divided by G into R. This you have studied in your 10th standard or 2nd PUC. I have considered the equation for centrifugal force, and by resolving the forces along the inclined surface we have. So when we consider the resolution of force in inclined surface, this is nothing but I have considered the force resolution of force, that is F along this axis, that is horizontal axis, F along horizontal axis, and G or W along vertical axis. In your engineering mechanics or elements of civil engineering, you have studied that the resolution of a force along the horizontal component as cos theta, along the vertical component as sin theta, right? The same thing is considered here. Now resolving the forces along the horizontal and vertical components. Now horizontal component I have considered as F cos alpha, and the vertical component I have considered as W sin alpha, right? Where when I consider this resolution, where F is equal to W V square divided by GR, and cos alpha is equal to G by S, and sin alpha is equal to E by S, right? Therefore, moving on, therefore equation 2 becomes W V square by GR, and GR, this is nothing but the substitution for the above expressions. I am substituting the value of F, that is W V square by G into R, and the value of cos alpha. Cos alpha is equal to G by S. How did I get this G by S? G by S is nothing but adjacent side by hypotenuse side, and sin alpha is equal to opposite side by hypotenuse side. In this case, you can see here for this triangle, opposite side is E, hypotenuse side is S, and adjacent side is G, right? When I consider cos alpha, G by S. When I consider sin alpha, E by S, right? This is how I have got this expression. And now I am going to resolve this equation for the super elevation E. E is equal to V square divided by GR into G in meters, where V is in meters per second. That is equal to G. I am converting this into meters per second or kilometers per hour. V is in meters per second, so I am converting this into kmph. G into 0.278 V the whole square divided by 9.81 into R, where 9.81 is equal to gravity, and GV square divided by 1.27 into R, it is equal to GV square divided by 1.27 into R, which I have converted the meters to centimeters, right? Where G is in meters, V is in kilometers per hour, R is in meters. And in India, for a broad gauge track, this measurements, you know, the gauge, that is the gauge length of a broad gauge track is gauge length of a broad gauge track is 1.67, and meter gauge is 1 meters, and narrow gauge is 0.762 meters. So for a broad gauge track, super elevation E is equal to 1.676 V square divided by 1.27 R, that is equal to 1.315 V square divided by R centimeters for a broad gauge track. Next, for a meter gauge track, E is equal to 1 into V square divided by 1.27 into R, and it is equal to 0.80 V square divided by R centimeters. For a narrow gauge track, E is equal to 0.762 into V square divided by 1.27 into R, which is equal to 0.60 V square divided by R centimeters. So this is the relationship between the super elevation and the gauge of the track, speed of the train, so and the curvature of the track. This is the relationship. So this is a very important derivations from your examination point of view as well as your career point of view.